I don't know, how have you digested all of that?
It's been good. I think huge credit to the coaching staff here. From the moment I was drafted, we were on Zooms, starting that Monday with installs and making sure I was getting familiar with the playbook. So, knowing next week when we step into OTAs, I'm up to speed with the vets. So rookie minicamp has definitely helped me, I think, get my bearings on that front.
Does it kind of hit you yet, just in a couple of years, go from Princeton to Big 12 to the NFL now?
Yeah, I think it's been a slow process to kind of digest and I think reflect on it. But I do think especially these last 2 days, okay, yeah, we're living a dream right now, and I think it's one thing to live a dream, it's one thing to hold the dream, and I think that's what I'm working to do every day.
When you went to Iowa State, obviously you wanted more competition, whatever. Why was that the school that you made the choice for?
Yeah, I think it's on two fronts. They had the best plan for me in terms of, all right, this is how we're going to get you from point A to point B in terms of accomplishing your dream to go to the league. They got Coach Ryan Clanton there my junior year at Princeton, came down from UNI, had produced, 2 top 3 round picks while he was at UNI, and Trevor Penning and Spencer Brown at tackle. And they had a blueprint, and I knew if I went there, I'd be able to fit into that blueprint and take the next step. But also, I think the culture at Iowa State is second to none, and was something I wanted to be a part of.
I think you did not allow any sacks last year or something like that. Was it?
Yeah, if you talk to me, if you talk to PPF, or PFF, they may say 1, but I don't believe that. You can watch the film for yourself.
Just how proud of that are you? Because I mean that's very few guys can say that, I guess.
100%.
I don't know, just what allowed that to happen, and how proud of that are you?
Yeah, it's something I take pride in is our line, especially for my running backs and my quarterback especially. I don't like folks touching them. And, when I do my job, I know I can do it very well. And especially when I'm able to, allow my quarterback to come out the game with a clean jersey, I know I did my job. And that's something that, I think across the board, we were extremely proud of, especially last year when we played, 8 or 9 different alignment throughout the course of the year, and everyone stepped in and did their job. So huge credit to them, but it's definitely something I take pride in.
I'm not sure you guys have even gotten this far yet, but it does feel like there's a chance for you, if you do your job, to have an important role. That doesn't mean start necessarily, but be a core guy on that offensive line. Do you sense that? Do you have any thought? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I think that's a conversation that the coaching staff is obviously going to have, throughout the course of OTAs and fall camp. But I'm just looking forward to, I think, one, coming and competing and pushing our room to be the best we can be in this league.
You've been involved in the community throughout your time in college. Just what is it that motivates you to kind of give back in that way and do things off the football field?
Yeah, I think from a young age I saw the example of my parents and my grandmother, in the house, busting their tail to make sure that not only, we had what we needed, but also those around us, those in the community. They were huge people in terms of giving back and making sure that, they set a great example for us. And that's something that, I've taken pride in, and, whether it's more in advocacy or, giving back to, local initiatives, that's something that, I view as, foundational to my identity and something I definitely want to continue.
Have you, kind of going off of that, looked into doing things in the local community here now?
Yeah, and I know these last few days have been extremely fast, but I've definitely been talking with my team and agents and stuff about what that looks like for me and how we can start dipping our toes in, and certainly a conversation I want to have with DT here.
You also had a internship, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay, what was that like, and how did you even land that?
It was insane, I think is the proper way to put it. I think DC, for most people, I think there's some stat where 99% of Americans never step foot within the Senate Rotunda or the Capitol Rotunda. But to actually be there, work there, have an ID that says, Senate intern on it was life-changing. And, Princeton has a program for internships in civic service. And I was fortunate enough to have my home senator, Amy Klobuchar, be a part of that. So she was going to take a Princeton student. I didn't know it was going to be me, so I applied and threw my name out there, and with a compelling resume and application, ended up getting picked.
Did you list football on the resume?
I did. Yep.
So she knew, okay, when you got there, that's the reason why he's this tall?
She knew the full package, yeah.
What did you do? What are the duties of a Senate intern?
Yeah, so I worked on her health, education, labor, and adoptions portfolio, and she didn't sit on the committee, so we didn't have as much work as some of the other interns, but we were responsible for, compiling news clippings, every morning when we got in. I opened up the office at 7 a.m., got my work done at 5 to make sure I was there on time. So once we compile the news clippings, we submit them, but throughout the day we're doing everything from answering calls to, you know, fulfilling constituent requests like mailing flags and, you know, receiving mail to, you know, escorting guests when they come in the door.
What did you learn from that internship or any of the other work that you did that maybe transferred onto the football field or even just in the locker room and being with the team, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think that it's twofold. I think for me, it's like grinders win, you know, especially in, you know, in football and on the hill. Like there's people who work 10, 12-hour days and get no credit for it. And I think the very same with football, especially my position. You know, if we're doing our job, no one will ever hear our name. And that's something that, you know, when I take pride in, like I said earlier. But I think twofold is like, you know, football I think is one of the rare microcosms of society in that you have guys from every corner of the country, every corner of the world coming together to fight for the same goal. And I think Capitol Hill was, you know, that. Obviously, it's blown up to be, you know, a lot more than it is, but, you know, people you're disagreeing with. But you know that at the end of the day, like, you still want the same thing in terms of making this country the best it can be.
What's the political version of PFF?
Well, I'm going to choose not to answer that question. That's a good one.
I mean, they gave him a sack.
Well, where does your level of learning come from? Like, was it forced on you at all? I mean, I had parents that was like, "You're gonna read today," and I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'm reading today."
Right. I think, you know, for me, I didn't grow up loving reading, for example. But it was something like as I began to explore topics I was interested in, there became a hunger for me to, I think, you know, get to the bottom of, you know, questions that I had or find answers to problems that, you know, I wanted to solve. And I think like that's where my hunger comes from. And I think like even in the game of football, where it's like, man, if I'm doing something wrong, like I want to get to the bottom of why, you know, and learn steps that I can take to address that. So I don't know where it necessarily comes from. Runs in the family. Some can say genetics or DNA, but you know, I definitely take pride in it as well.
Was the internship just to broaden your base as a person? I mean, the Colts had a guy, Anthony Gonzalez, a draft pick, and he went to Congress. I mean, do you think about life after football? Is that something that you look at, or is it just this was a great opportunity to broaden yourself as a person?
Yeah, I think like especially in the moment when I accepted it, like it was, you know, opportunity I think to grow my perspective, and I think like that's been a defining characteristic of my journey so far. Is that as opportunities come across that I view will help push me as a person, make me uncomfortable, and broaden my perspective. You know, I tend to take those, and I don't think like that opportunity was anything different. But definitely not looking too far down the road. I know I want to go to law school, you know, one day when football is over, but outside of that, not too much.
Question for you. I know you played with Jalen Suggs and Chet Holmgren and the AAU and all that, just as a basketball guy myself. Was there anybody you played on the AAU circuit where you were like, yeah, I might have to just do football?
Yeah, a handful of guys. I mean, you know, Paulo Banchero right now with the Magic, like guarded him. He was a year younger than me. You know, I'll still claim I held him to under 15 points that game. But it was like, all right, yeah, like this dude's a young bull, still giving me buckets. So football. But guys like, you know, we played, you know, Zeke Naji, who's with the Nuggets right now. You know, in high school, he went to one of our rivals. So, and obviously playing Chet and Jalen, you know, on the high school circuit, having the chance to play with them growing up in AAU. But there was a handful of guys where it was like, man, I can't jump that high. You know, I'm not that long, not that tall. That, you know, I think kind of humbled me, at least in basketball.